Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Okay, I can hear you. Um,
Very good.
Before we start, let's do a little check. I have reduced my microphone volume by about a quarter, so this is your feedback from last time. So hopefully, we should be more level.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think we're more or less uh, equal when it comes to the output volume. Okay, you can hear footsteps. This is Ella. Sorry about that. She's Ella says hello. Okay, is everything okay? Can you hear me? Okay, hello again.
Hi.
Right. I'm not entirely sure what happened there.
I don't know. It just stopped.
Okay. Well, we're back and
Yeah.
everything should be working
Hopefully
now.
that isn't a pres hopefully that isn't a precedent for things to come.
We'll see. Anyway, what's
Yeah.
new? It's been a long time.
It has, yeah. I tell you something. I have been playing I don't know if you saw this. I've been playing Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Oh, I saw a post about it.
Yeah, first time through it. I think it's fantastic.
Really?
So I just
You
thought,
recommend it?
yeah, definitely. Because my friend Tyler's been saying to me like, "Oh yeah, you should try it out," and eventually I was just like, "Yeah, all right." And I tried, and I'm just like, "Yeah, this is really good."
Okay. So
So I just
tell me
finished
about it.
that.
What's good about it? What year was
Man,
it released? Remind me.
1991, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I'll explain a few things. I'm not sure if I can like properly do it justice, but it's very interesting in the sense that this is a game that a lot of people hold in a very like high regards, and for me, it's just a case I've never played it. And so I'm sort of like an example where someone can't say to me like, "Oh, you just like it because of nostalgia," because like literally I just played it for the first time.
Hmm.
I guess I suppose one way to describe it is that I think it sort of rewards your sense of curiosity. So like you go out and you do, you're exploring and all that. And sometimes, like one example is that you get the you get an ability to switch between the dark world and the light world, but you can only go from the light world to the dark world through portals or by touching the bit that you actually like. And whenever you go into the light world, you place a portal where you are. So you can't like get to the dark world via the light world, if you get what I mean, just by like walking there. So you have like, but in the dark world, you can go to the light world at any point, and it basically just like flips it. Um, and there's a lot of things like strange. Like one thing that always stood out to me is sometimes you get like in the dark world you'd get strange like little areas and you think that's peculiar, like a circle of flowers that just seems out of place or whatever. And then you go there and you think, oh, hang on, switch to the light world, and it turns out you're in like a place that you couldn't get to otherwise. So
Hmm.
just lots of like little things
Interesting.
like that. Yeah, and it just makes you feel like, oh yeah, I've done well discovering that thing.
Hmm. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really enjoy games which are, like you said, reward your curiosity. This
Yes.
is a criticism, let's say, of a game that I haven't played it, but it's a criticism of Bethesda games in general. That there, for example,
Right.
Oblivion, there's lots to do. There, the world is quite big. You can go and explore the towns. You can go and speak to the citizens, but they're all kind of bland. They don't really do anything. They don't add much, aside from them existing and aside from Bethesda being able to sell it as some sort of fantastic new feature, Radiant AI. How much they actually add,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. Whereas, so it's not a game necessarily that rewards your curiosity, but it's but there is stuff to do. Whereas, okay, What you've described essentially is a game that not only not only do you have this feature, but by using this feature, you are rewarded for it.
Yes.
In simple terms.
Yeah. Because sometimes things look a bit off, and you can find like power-ups and heart pieces and all that
Okay.
just by going through those places.
Okay. Anyway, what else?
Yeah.
What else has been going on?
Um. Gee, I've been playing a lot of Magic, but that's just been a thing that's been going on for a while now. Um. Once I finished that, I went on to started playing Tomb Raider 2 again, but it's just like I'm just gonna play through, get all the secrets. But I know that game. I know that game well, so there's nothing like new there. Um. But I can't remember what's happened. I mean, when was it that we last did one of these? I can't remember.
I'll be a good half a year ago at least. I
I don't think
think.
so.
You think it's been sooner?
I, don't- I think so. Well, I think it was between that one and the one before was a long time.
Okay. Maybe it's
But
when I go
maybe you,
maybe it's when I go back from China. Did I tell you about that?
maybe. I remember you saying you went to China. I think
And
it might have been actually.
yeah, maybe when I got back, we got round to it. Well, what's been happening with me in terms of video games? I installed Grand Theft Auto 4. This is a game I played on the PlayStation 3,
Yeah.
and I've played that. That's the first Grand Theft Auto game I've played. Sorry, I've got a connection problem. Hello, can you hear me?
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
What happened?
my internet just cut out for a moment.
Oh, all right.
I do need to get round to resetting the router or something. I don't know. For the last couple of days, it's just cut out every now and again. Yes, I said that I've installed Grand Theft Auto 4 and I'm playing it for the first time since 2008 when it came out.
Yeah.
By that I mean the story mode. I think I played online for a while afterwards, just messing around with a friend in the sandbox.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's okay. I really like it for the vehicle physics, just driving around. That's the kind of thing that is most interesting to me about it. But I'm just kind of taken aback by how much has happened, how much has progressed in the world of video games since Grand Theft Auto.
Okay. So what would you
So
say is an example of something that it does that it would or it doesn't do that has changed?
that has changed. Well,
Yeah, we said a lot of
gathering materials and crafting. Every single game seems to have it now. Before I played Grand Theft Auto 4, I actually installed Far Cry 3 and played through Far Cry 3 again. I'm just curious as to how I feel about it now. Again, this is going back to it after a long period of time between
yeah,
from the last time I played it. And Far Cry 3, there's okay, so it is open world, but at the same
yeah,
time the missions are kind of linear. You just go from one to the story missions, so you go from one to the next to the next to the next.
yeah,
The only thing I did in Far Cry 3, but apart from that, is unlock the towers to get the better weapons for free,
right,
and I liberated outposts because that's kind of fun. But aside from that, I
yeah,
just went from one mission to another. However, in preparing for a new mission or in preparing for the next thing that I was going to do, I could gather herbs, I could uh, find new weapons or get customizations for weapons. In Grand Theft Auto, the dynamics are different. So when you do the story is kind of separated completely from the sandbox. So when
yes,
you're the sandbox and you're just going around shooting whatever you want, driving around wherever you want, you can have loads of fun. Of course, it's like having a big bucket of Lego bricks. But
yeah,
if you can imagine, okay, this may be a good example. Grand Theft Auto is like having a remote controlled car, one that your parents have bought you, and it's just a one whole product. It's kind of the story mode of Grand Theft Auto is the remote controlled car, but it's not made of Lego. And in addition to this remote controlled car, you have a big bucket of Lego bricks. So you can either play with the Lego bricks or you can play with a remote controlled car. You can't
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
link the two together. Whereas I think modern
Yes.
games do a better job at giving you a remote controlled car, but it's actually made of Lego and you can modify the remote controlled car however you want.
See, that's actually kind of um, that kind of touches on another subject, like another, because one of the ideas for a topic I had was when a series changes.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to briefly touch on it now, but that sounds like the opposite direction of the way that Tony Hawk's went with between Tony Hawk's 3 and 4. Because with Tony Hawk, no, yeah, Tony Hawk's from 3, like 1, 2, and 3 are very similar, and then with 4 they changed it. So with 3, and the first 3 games, you start a level, you have 2 minutes, you have a list of goals,
Hmm.
and you complete however many of those goals that you can do within the 2 minutes.
And in whatever order
I'm
you
gonna,
want.
yes, and
Exactly.
at the end of the 2 minutes, it'll say like, yeah, here's all the things you got this score, you found it in tape, you got the skate letters, you didn't do this, but you did do this, and then you
Hmm.
start again and you clean up whatever's left. And what they did with Tony Hawk's 4 was that instead of having a 2 minute timer, you just have this like this open like level with no timer at all. You just go around and then you talk to different characters around and they'll say something like, "Oh, I bet you can't beat me in a skating competition or
Oh yeah.
whatever," or I'll shout out some moves and you do them. And
Hmm.
then it like enters you into this little arena or this little part of the level, or maybe even just the whole level where it'll be like, "Oh, can you collect the skate letters?" And then you've got however long to go and do that thing. But each of these things are segregated. So with the first 3 games, it's like, all right, if I go this route, I can get the S from the skate and I can get some points on that rail. And
Yep.
you get better at learning the levels and you can combine them. But with 4, it's just you do one thing at a time. And I think that really hampers it. To why I
Hmm.
think 4 isn't as good as the previous ones.
Yeah, and I think they continued that method. If I remember correctly, Underground and Underground 2, they were just more of the same.
I think so. I think
Some kind of
Underground.
story, and then there are characters dotted around the world that tell you to do certain things.
Yeah. I remember with Underground, you could increase your stats by like accomplishing other missions. So it'd be like grind, like hold the grind for 10 seconds and you get your grinding skill at 1 point.
Hmm.
And then like as you progress through the levels, more of those challenges unlock.
Hmm.
So it's a bit of a mix. But I
Yeah.
do think the whole here's a bunch of stuff, which actually goes back to what I was saying, kind not so much, but that kind of relates to with the Zelda games that I was talking about. It's like with A Link to the Past, it's just right. Here's the world. There's some power-ups and hidden weapons and items around. Go find them. And if you see them, you know how to get to them. And if you don't, see if you can find out. But with Ocarina of Time, there's a lot more of talking to a character and them saying, "Oh, I need someone to do this favor for me," and then you do it, and then they give you a heart piece. It again, it's much more segregated.
Hmm. Do you think it's
So
necessarily a lot worse that it's segregated, that there is a split between each activity?
I think it is worse. I'm not sure about necessarily.
But what I mean uh, is there a way for the designer to split things up so that it's more palatable for modern gamers, for kids, while at the same time while at the same time not like handing everything over on a silver spoon. So take for example Skate. You can have let's say a story driven mode where you speak to characters and characters encourage you to do certain things, but you can still make them challenging enough. You can still make them uh, interesting enough that it's not simply, instead of giving you 2 minutes to collect skate letters and score a certain points. Of course, you decide how you want to do it. You could have a character give you this task. So all that changes is essentially the way the task has been framed, but the task isn't necessarily easier.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's easier anyway, because the whole thing, like the thing I was telling you before about, oh, collect the skate letters within this time or
Hmm.
whatever, because I think in a way, because it's made to be segregated, they feel more, um, what's the word? I feel like they feel like they've got more leeway to make a harsher time limit because they know that that's all you're going to be doing.
Hmm.
And like with the Zelda example, I found that I mean, I don't know, it might just be me or the way my brain works or the way I play games or whatever, but I found in Link to the Past where it was just a case of look around, see what looks odd. I found a lot more of those heart pieces than I did in Ocarina of Time, where you have to talk to people and get and do favors for them because I just found them easier to find.
Hmm. Going back to Far Cry and Grand Theft Auto 4, the games that I've played recently, Far Cry 3.
Yeah.
Um, I'm quite surprised at how long I spent in the world of Far Cry 3 the previous time, the first time that I played it. Because this time, it wasn't nearly as interesting or as challenging. And of course, it's because I'm going back and because I expect certain things to happen. But I think I'm perhaps conditioned to expect more, or I'm just conditioned to go through games faster these days. And I think a part of it might be my skill in shooting games in general. So something that I found really
Right.
easy to begin with in Far Cry, you're given a pistol and that's it. And
Yeah.
I found that given that I've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours playing competitive shooting games in Counter Strike, and that's over 10, 11 years now actually. I played Counter Strike with some level of frequency. Go in Far Cry 3, going into a camp with just a pistol and picking people off, just purely mechanically using my skills in shooting,
Yeah.
really takes out some of the difficulty and some of the charm perhaps that that game would have to offer. At no point was I ever in a situation where I needed to think outside the box because I just knew that I could walk in and just shoot everybody and that'd be fine. And that's
Well,
similar. It's actually that like that, but a lot more uh, more profound, I think, in Grand Theft Auto 4, especially since I've gone from playing it on the console on the PlayStation 3 to the PC. So the PC port
yeah.
is notorious for being really slow and really badly optimized. But I found a mod that basically fixes all the problems that Rockstar didn't fix when they ported it. And it's resulted in a really smooth experience. So smooth, in fact, that again, I can transfer these shooting skills to Grand Theft Auto 4. So all the shooting is really easy and banal now. And like I said, the driving I really enjoy. But at the same time, driving when you want to do whatever you want, like with the Lego bricks, is loads of fun because you're choosing what you want to do. Or if you enter the races, that's loads of fun. But when it's a mission and you just are being told constantly to drive from point A to point B to point C, it really does get annoying. And
Yeah.
it kind of shows again how we've moved forwards from essentially fetch quests, which is which what I feel is like 90% of Grand Theft Auto 4. Just go here, shoot him, or go here and wait for this person, then bring them back, or something like that.
Yeah. See, from my perspective, as someone who isn't an FPS fan, who isn't as familiar with them as you are, and who isn't as skilled at them as you are, I really enjoyed Far Cry 3.
Hmm.
But if something's like if a first-person shooter is competitive, I mean, I don't think I could try to lose any harder than I do.
Uh, Okay, so there are two things that I'd like to say. First of all,
Okay.
uh, I have to I have to put my hands up and admit that when I first started playing a competitive first-person shooting game, I was absolutely horrendous,
Oh yeah.
and that somebody actually trained me. Not in a sense that we were trying to win some prize or something like that, but simply
Yeah.
I think the friend that I played with for so long, he was just so fed up of me being terrible that he ended up teaching me how to be better in order to succeed. So, for example, like a really easy thing to do in any game, and perhaps you know this as well, in a third-person shooter, a first-person shooter, and a third-person action game, Tomb Raider or a Far Cry, point your crosshair at where you expect the enemy to be. So, for example,
Oh yeah.
if you're walking around the corner, you hold your crosshair at the enemy. If you're more skilled, you hold it at the head of the enemy. If you can shoot, if there is location damage, so if you can aim for the head and it does more damage.
Yeah.
So many times you see players who are new or who are not particularly good at shooting games, and it's especially evident on Counter Strike because on Counter Strike, the way the games works is that in a given round, if you die, you have to spectate your friends, your teammates, until the round is over, until you respawn. And so when you spectate them, you can't control what they're doing, of course, and you just start nitpicking at every single silly thing they do. And something that people do all the time is just look at the ground while they walk around. So their crosshair, the center of their screen is looking somewhere at the floor because, of course, their eyes perhaps aren't trained. Their eyes are looking at the screen anyway, so it's where their eyes are. That's not where the center of the screen is. They're not looking at the center of the screen essentially. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I can't.
that's like a really simple thing that you can do. It's just to aim where you expect the enemy to be. If you're not aiming where you expect the enemy to be, and the enemy shows up, then that's a full half second or a second of you moving your mouse to the enemy, whereas it could have just been there. All you had to do was click. I know it's a really nitpicky and stupid thing, but so that's the first thing I wanted to say. So that firstly, I was trained. I wasn't, it's not that I'm gifted or anything. The second thing
No. Like
is
it's experience, isn't it?
absolutely. The second thing I would mention is how fed up I am with competitive games. I don't
All right.
understand why every single game has to be like a competitive experience. It has to be an esport.
Oh yeah.
I dislike it. I
Yeah.
really, really dislike it. I grew up with, I've mentioned this many times before, I'll keep mentioning it. I grew up with Delta Force, and there were of course competitive, leagues and ladders and so on, but I just played on community servers. So there were a bunch of us, we knew each other very well, we played together, we had fun together, and that was that. If some player was very good, then we would intentionally split ourselves up so that we would balance the server and make it fun for everybody, so everyone had a chance of winning or everyone had a chance of doing well. I remember one guy was particularly good, so a few of us uh, went into a different channel on the TeamSpeak, on the group chat, just so that we can work together to play against him, essentially, ignoring everyone else on the server. Whereas now everyone has to have a rank, everyone has to play to win, play as best they can, and I find it incredibly frustrating. There is also a side effect
Yeah.
of that, and the side effect is if there is incentive to win, if there is incentive to win, to rank up, to be better, to be the very best, and there is a leaderboard to show that you're the very best, and by playing better you get a higher rank, then there is incentive to cheat. And I'm not saying
Oh
that
yes.
Call of Duty back in the day when it was just Call of Duty 4, that's a famous one where you have people cheating in the lobby and then you get banned because somebody else cheated. You didn't cheat, but those kinds of things. Of course, they happened, and back those games didn't have a competitive mode at all. But if you compare a game which has no kind of competitive element to it, which is simply either just cooperative or player versus player, but it's set in servers where there are just communities playing, then you don't get nearly as many cheaters as you do in a game like Counter Strike. And it's so infuriating that everything has to be competitive to the point that I have slowly begun winding down my involvement in any kind of competitive game or any kind of shooting game, to be honest, any multiplayer game. I think
Yeah.
it got it reached a critical it reached a critical point last year where I was just so fed up with Counter Strike and playing with some friends and playing with my brothers that I ended up installing Skyrim, modding it to high heaven, and just spending a good few weeks playing single player only. And
Yeah.
I think it's better.
Well, I find like because I play Magic, sometimes depending on what format, because the way it's divided up is you've got two different types of format. You've got constructed and limited, and constructed is where you come in with your own deck, and like you've made your deck, and then limited is where you sort of get cards and have to make your own deck with the cards you get. So
Hmm.
there's like those two types,
Yep.
and I very much prefer limited.
Hmm.
One reason being is that the cards that are usually considered like bad can see some play and they can see some use,
Yes, I agree.
whereas in constructed they just never see play. But sometimes it's like if I'm playing like some constructed format just for the sake of grinding wins to get my daily gold or whatever, I'll see like a card and I'll just be like, yep, and I know like what their deck is.
Uh-huh.
So there's one there's one I don't remember the name of the card, but there's one card where um it's a very cheap card as well, very cheap to like bring out. I can't remember the details, but it allows you to equip something like a weapon or an equipment onto a creature without paying its equip cost.
Uh-huh.
And then I see that, and I'm just like, right, you've got Colossus Hammer, and Colossus Hammer is a weapon that's very powerful, and very cheap to bring out, but very expensive to equip. And I
Hmm.
see the first card, and I'm like, yep, okay, Colossus Hammer, here we go. Have you got it? And you get that sometimes, like you just see like a card, it's like, yep, okay, so I'm waiting for them to play this other thing that will win them the game.
Is there much of a problem with cheaters or seeing like somebody being completely overpowered? So I understand this would be in the constructed category that there are
Yeah.
cards that you feel that you don't have access to because it's behind a paywall or because it's really difficult to get those cards because it would take a really long time to get it. But other people seem to have them, and uh, it's like an unfair advantage for them. Or, in other words, how would you describe cheating and fairness in that game?
I'd say it's fair. I don't think there's any like unfairness. I mean, if you're talking about like resources and all that, you can. I mean, the thing is, I could, if I really wanted to, because I have enough resources now. Because you get they're called wild cards, where you can like spend them to get any card of that rarity. So if I wanted to make like a high tiered deck, I could, but I've just got a cheap. I've got this goblin deck, which the only purpose of it is just to have fast games because they just, they come out, they're cheap, they're fast, they attack quickly, and if they die, it doesn't really matter because they've got like extra effects when they die quite often. And I just use that just to grind wins. And it's like, well, it's not, it's a good deck, it's decent, but if it loses, it'll lose fast, so it's okay. Um, but there are some times where I'll sort of like get to learn cards um not necessarily exactly what they do, but I've just like played against them so much. Like there's this one card which I don't know, I haven't looked into it. I don't know how it works, but they always whenever they bring out turn one, and it means I'm probably going to be dead by like in the next turn because it means they can suddenly they'll bring out a massive dragon afterwards somehow, like through some ability it's got. And I don't know exactly how it works. There's probably some like very specific setup that you need for it. But as soon as I see it, because I recognize the picture, I was like, right, you're going to hit me with some massive thing next turn.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I just think, oh, that card.
Okay, bit of a different question here now.
Okay.
Do you think there has to be some kind of inherent challenge in a video game, either multiplayer or not multiplayer? Does the game have
Right.
to pose some kind of challenge? Does it have to be a degree of difficulty?
Now, are we getting into the topic? Because this sounds like,
I think we may be, you know.
yeah, I think this sounds like we're getting into the topic.
Okay, so
Um,
what is the topic for today? What is the title?
the topic is this was your idea, this one, and it is what is video games?
Yeah.
So, you were asking, does there need to be a challenge?
Yeah.
Um, I think there there does, but there's lots of leeway there.
Okay.
What do you think?
There's lots of leeway.
Yeah, like it can be. It doesn't mean there doesn't have to be like a certain level of difficulty. I mean, say if there's a game which is press a button and you win.
Mm-hmm.
That is a level of challenge that people wouldn't consider a challenge, but it is a task you have to complete that takes an amount of effort.
It won't complete itself.
Yeah,
Okay. So I remember one of the things that I recall about this topic is it was a review. I don't know if it was Total Biscuit or somebody else. When Dear Esther came out many, many years ago,
oh yeah,
and it was a review that blasted Dear Esther, not as a piece of art in and of itself, because as a story, it's it's fine, it's interesting, it has something to say. There is a story there. Somebody put a lot of effort into it, but as a video game, it does not even register because Dear Esther. If anybody, I'm probably not going to spoil it very much, but it might be a spoiler. Dear Esther is essentially a game that you walk around an island and you listen to a story. There is
yeah,
no real way to lose. There's no fail state. There's no, you can't fall to your death, or you can't. There is no Goomba that's going to kill you. So this was the threshold that the commenter, I can't remember who it was again. This was the
yeah,
threshold that there needs to be a fail state. There needs to be a way, some kind of inherent challenge. But you've just
yeah.
said that not necessarily a fail state, but a win state. Maybe both.
Well, I think I think not even necessarily a win state, just sort of like a general goal
Hmm.
to accomplish, even if it's really simple. I think yeah,
So
that works. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how de-arrestor works. I mean, I don't know if the story just happens or if you have to walk to particular areas or you just walk around and it just happens. But I think as long as you're like based on what I know, I would say if you're not required to move, then no. But if you have to take at least one step, then yes.
hmm yeah,
If that makes sense.
that's very fair.
Yeah.
So in that case, my second question, my follow-up question to that would be visual novels. How do you rank visual novels? These are essentially, we could describe them as comic books where you just click a mouse to progress to the next slide. Sometimes you have choices, but not necessarily.
Yeah. Are you thinking like choose your own adventures?
No, actually, no, because visual novels, sometimes they allow you to affect the story, and sometimes there's a preset story, and all you're doing is watching it.
Yeah.
So, an example that I can give you, this is one that actually lets you choose the story, and this is a game that I own, but I haven't finished playing it yet. I installed it, I played it for a while, and then I stopped. Well, is Steins Gate. Steins Gate. There's an anime, Steins Gate. It's about time travel, and there's also a story where you're essentially there's also sorry a video game, a visual novel game, where you're playing through the story, but you can make choices to influence everything, and you can get different outcomes. So
Yeah.
So, according to your estimation, that would still be a game because you have to actually do something. It's not just a game is being played. But if there was a visual novel that didn't have this aspect of interactivity, where essentially you're just clicking the mouse button or pressing enter or even just doing autoplay to play through a story. And then after it's done,
Yeah,
it shuts down itself and that's it. Would that still count as a game?
yeah. I don't know. I think it's very murky because I was just thinking, like, with my whole thing with DRS there, I said how you have to, as long as you take one
Yeah.
step. I was then thinking, but do I really want to say that a DVD is a game because you have to press start?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, no, I don't want to say that. So, so, so it's like, I don't know, am I correct or am I justified in saying about where the line, like that there is a line to be drawn somewhere here? I don't know.
About that DVD question, it's interesting actually because uh, my mum hates technology. She would
Oh yeah,
rather we remained in the 1950s before computers. She's not
yeah,
that old, but she just doesn't like technology at all. If she grew up in the 1970s, there would have been computers, but they weren't mainstream. Not everyone had to use them. So yeah, she would have preferred to remain in the 1970s. Just life is a lot simpler with pen and paper. At the same
yeah,
time, she is able to work a TV remote and choose a program and work a DVD player and press play. And it's absolutely mesmerizing that I remember giving her I was playing a DVD a long time ago now, but I was playing a DVD on the PlayStation 3. I put a DVD in or a Blu-ray and we're watching a film. And I told her, press X to pause because I need to go to the toilet. And she took one look at the controller and just thought, this is all nonsense to me, and refused to even acknowledge that this really primitive control, because the controller has 20 buttons or so, or 20 possible things that you could press. A complex TV remote has twice as many buttons, but because it was shaped like a controller, she refused to even acknowledge that it could be used to control a DVD. So that's like an interesting spin on what you just said.
yeah. Well, I've actually thought about that before. I was thinking, how do people struggle so much with the concept of a controller when they can use like a TV remote?
Yeah,
I mean, I get that. I mean, the closest explanation I can get is that a controller, everything's labeled like generically
yeah,
rather than specifically. It's like, what does square mean? You wouldn't have square on a TV remote. It would be called something like, you'd have like volume up or whatever.
yeah, or stop or whatever.
Everything. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's my like explanation there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
But even though she had,
yeah.
specific instructions from me, I just told her that X means pause. No,
Yeah.
wouldn't take any of it.
Yeah, it's like, no, this isn't real.
So a DVD is most definitely not a game, unless it actually includes a game, because you can get DVD games. And this is
Yeah.
where choose your own adventure might come in,
Yeah. Or like a quiz.
or quizzes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
So, so what do you think about the whole win state, lose state thing? Do you think that's an important factor?
I think so. I wouldn't be
Okay.
somebody. I wouldn't be somebody who is confident enough in their own opinion. But then again, that's just my personality. Confident enough in their own opinion to say categorically that something cannot be a game. So I wouldn't go out and say, "Dear Esther is not a game because it does not have a win state or a fail state." Maybe the win state is just to finish it.
Yeah.
There is an Irish comedian who's on English TV a lot. I don't know if he's on English TV now because haven't watched English TV in probably 10 years. Dara O'Brien. I don't know if you know who he is.
I know him. Ah, yes, I think I know what you're going to talk about here.
Go on then. What am I going to talk about?
There's a bit where he talks about how games are the only medium that stop you if you're not good enough.
Yeah, basically, he was
Yeah,
comparing a game to a book, and at no point
yeah,
while you're reading a book does the book say what is the main theme in this book, and if you can't answer the question, you can't carry on reading. Which
yeah,
actually would be handy because sometimes when you read a book and you're not really paying attention, you realize that you've read 20 pages and then you think, oh, well, what just happened in these last 20 pages? I found that a lot when I was at
yeah,
university. and then
Yeah.
and then you have to go and back and reread them, or not if you don't care enough. So there,
Yeah.
I would say yes, there would have to be some kind of difficulty, some kind of challenge, a win state, a fail state, okay. But what if there is no win state? For example, Call of Duty Zombies, or
Yeah.
other games perhaps where there is no end. It's just like a never-ending model. You know, like those line runners. No, not line runners. Like runner apps. I think it was Temple Run. That's an example on iPhone and Android back in the day,
Oh, yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
just never
He's
ending,
good.
and you're the challenge. The whole challenge is to see how far you can go. That's the same basic, same premise as Call of Duty Zombies. You see how
Yeah.
long you can last in this world, and it gets progressively more difficult. So there
Well,
is
that was
no,
the idea. That was the idea with like the original arcade games like Pac-Man and Space
Mhm.
Invaders. You just kept going.
Yeah. So there doesn't necessarily need to be a win state, but a fail state I think is fairly important. So I'm going to throw another spanner in the
Ah,
works.
okay.
Playing Final Fantasy VIII. We have to
Yep.
mention Final Fantasy VIII in
We
every
have to.
single call.
I was wondering if this would be one where we didn't, but you
No, no,
said it
no.
and I was like, ah, never mind.
It's written down in my notes.
All right.
So I've been playing Final Fantasy VIII with Ella. I've been showing Ella Final Fantasy VIII,
Yeah.
and we've lost once. We've died once, I think. That isn't to say that she's a bad player, because most battles I'm controlling the controller, and I help her do menus and plan what to do. Originally, I think my idea was just to let her throw her in the deep end and see how she manages, but I figured this would be more fun for both of us if we play together. So we had one death, and I'm trying to recall when it was. Ah, it was in disc two, the oil boils.
Oh yeah.
I didn't have any fire magic at all up until this point, and I wasn't using limit breaks. I was just hoping to, you know, with some characters to use GFs and just get through that way. And I died. We died. We got to the losing screen. We listened to the lovely calming music, and then we started again. And this time I prepared a little bit better. I just mashed limit breaks, and we got through it. There is a degree of difficulty, even though I'm playing this game. I'm playing Final Fantasy VIII for the umpteenth time, 20 something time. There is still some degree of difficulty, and I was caught out, and I did lose. I did reach that fail state. But that just made me think. I was
Yeah.
playing the FF8 remaster, and that remaster, as we know, has cheats. You can press F1, F2, or F3, or F4, I think. So one of them
Yeah.
just gives you everything of everything. So in the menu, you have all items, all magic, basically everything you could possibly need. Another one means it's limit breaks all the time, and the other one, and the final one, I think, is 3 times speed. So F1, F2, F3. If we had enabled all of those cheats, let's say apart from the speed, if we had enabled all of those cheats, would we ever see a fail state? Would a complete novice to the game ever see a fail state? If oh yeah, and the other thing
Uh,
is it's always your turn. There is never any waiting for on the ATB.
yeah.
So in that case, if if the FFA remaster with the cheats, is it still a video game if it's no longer possible to lose?
Well, I don't agree that a game needs a fail state.
Okay, so
I don't.
we're back to DVDs.
I, I don't think you, because the thing is like you can have. I mean, you can have a game where there's like a positive direction and a negative direction. So you can
Hmm.
go, like your goal is to head in the positive direction. And say you could say like a never-ending game where something like these temple run games or Jetpack Joyride where it just goes on and on and on, and maybe you build up some resources to make it easier next time, or Space Invaders. You just keep going. That's fine.
Hmm.
But a fail state is something. where in and of itself is like again it can be like subjectively measured because say like in Pokemon you lose a battle.
Hmm.
It says, "Oh no, you whited out," and then you wake up at the Pokemon Center.
Yep.
Poke Center? Is it Poke Center? I don't know. And you lose half your money. Now you could say that's a fail state, but
You can keep
I
playing.
mean you can keep playing, yeah.
Hmm.
And like in other games, if like in Final Fantasy 8, you see the game over screen, you reload the save, and you keep playing from there. So like, what makes that losing, but having a Pokemon faint
Yeah.
not count as losing?
So we're approaching the question: define fail state.
Yeah,
Can you define fail state? What is a fail state? I would say, in the simplest terms, it's something that stops you from progressing or continuing what you're doing. So Final Fantasy VIII compared to Pokemon would be more of a fail state, or more of a classic fail state, because you are reset to your previous game save, to your previous save point.
yeah,
Take Far Cry 3 for example. When you're doing one of the story missions and you die, you revert back to the last checkpoint, and so you can kind of continue in ad nauseum, because it's you keep being given more and more opportunities to succeed. But essentially you're never told that's it. You have to start right from the beginning. Like you don't have lives like in Super Mario Brothers. We've gone offline again. Okay, we're back.
okay,
Sorry about that. Right,
it's all right.
we are. I was saying. Um, Hold on. What was I saying?
You're saying about a fail state, and you reload your save, and you go back.
Yeah. So defining a fail state, could you say that Final Fantasy VIII, as an example, has more of a fail state than the likes of Pokemon? Because, like you
I
said,
think,
Pokemon you just lose half your money, but you can continue, and when you have no money left, you don't lose any money. So one thing that
yeah,
I remember I used to do is farm the Elite Four. If I couldn't beat the Elite Four yet, I would just level up my Pokemon fighting Lorelei of the Elite Four, and accept that I was going
yeah,
to lose all my money. So I would spend all my money before I started, and then just rinse and repeat.
yeah. That's one way to do it. You don't lose half your items. You just
Yeah.
lose half your money. Well, I think again, I think everything's a scale. I
Hmm.
think even if like you could have some like hardcore game where if you die once, everything's gone and you lose like 100 hours of progress or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could call that a fail state, and it's definitely the most extreme version of that. But there's that, and then there's something like, oh dear, I accidentally took a step backwards.
Hmm.
I need to take another step forward to counteract that. I think those are both the same kind of things, just different ends of this of the scale. And I think basically, um, I think the primary thing for something to be a game is that there has to be a scale. There has to be somewhere on the scale. If you're just watching something, then
Hmm.
you're not. I don't know. There's not really like interaction in that regards.
Yeah. So interactivity is important. Interactivity is
Yeah,
central to the definition of a video game. So, what is video
yeah.
games? Something that is interactive and on the computer,
Well, well.
or on a kind
Two.
of computer device or computer-like device.
Yeah. So I think, for example, like we talk about Lego, I think I think with Lego you would say Lego isn't a game, but if you say to yourself, right, I've got these pieces, I'm gonna try and build a house, and you give yourself like you've got this idea of what house you want to build, then you could say that that's a game, even if Lego itself is not. You've invented your own game that you're like
Oh yeah,
partaking in.
absolutely.
Yeah.
A game could be uh, getting out of bed straight away in the morning instead of sleeping in. That could be a game. You could make it into a game.
Yeah, I like not walking on the cracks,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
things like that.
But our question isn't what is games. Our question is what is video games. So now
Yeah.
I have a curveball for you.
Okay.
Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Have I mentioned the Wikipedia game to you?
No, you haven't, but I think I know what it is.
I'm sure you do. It was a
Is it where
favorite school. Yeah, go on.
is it where you're given two topic, like you're given a two like
Okay, our connection has gone again. Hello.
hel- hello?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I think it might
Yeah.
have something to do with the animals. So maybe the cats are stepping on a power cable or something. I don't know. I'll
Right.
figure it out before the next call. But for today, we
Right.
have to kind of make do. Uh,
Yeah.
you cut out just as you're about to explain what the Wikipedia game is, in your estimation.
Yeah. So it's where you're given a page and you're told you have to get to this other page within X amount of clicks.
That's
You have to like
ex-
find like
that's that's exactly
yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
usually we start on the home page, and on the home page you have to get to a certain topic. So like an easy one would be how to get to Pokemon, and then you
Yeah.
basically record how many clicks it takes you, and then somebody else tries to beat it.
Yeah.
Is the Wikipedia game a video game?
Yeah, I
Because
would
it's
say so.
interactive. It takes place on a computer.
Yeah.
There is
I
a
did actually
video
make
element.
yeah, see I did actually make I did actually this actually is actually a point that I wanted to make because I was thinking if you remember at the arcade club there was a game that we played where at the time we didn't know if there was a screen. So if there was a screen, would that have turned it into a video game?
Hmm.
And would it have affected our enjoyment or our like analysis of the game itself? Either way.
Hmm.
See, I
Another
think,
strange point
yeah,
could be what if a normal video game on the computer, has a mode for the visually impaired. It doesn't require the screen at all. It requires a keyboard, a mouse, perhaps a controller, and audio cues.
yeah,
Is that a video game? It takes place on a computer, it's
yeah.
electronic, it has inputs, but it doesn't have the video element.
I mean, the thing is as well with that though is that you could say that about any game because I mean, what the screen there is there to do is to signal information to you.
Hmm.
But with any game, it's possible to know it like inside and out to like accurately predict every single button press. I mean, even if it is, if I mean, obviously it's going to be very difficult, and especially in cases where there's like RNG involved or other players. But any game could be played without a screen.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to playing a game without a screen. I think I told you the story about Final Fantasy VIII and fighting Bahamut. My older brother I was playing with my older brother. We had an old TV that was breaking all the time. Did I tell you the story?
I don't think so.
Oh, I haven't. Okay, well, if I have, I'm sorry. If I haven't, then here we go. Uh, so this was our first or maybe second playthrough of Final Fantasy VIII. I do recall that our first playthrough of Final Fantasy VIII, me and my older brother, our first playthrough, we got to Ultimisia's castle, but we were too low level. Basically, it was impossible for us to win, and we weren't skilled enough at that point to get all the items to succeed. So we started again from the very
Hmm.
beginning. And when I say we, I mean he was playing. It wasn't me. I was just watching.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got to the Deep Sea Research Center. We got to Bahamut, and we were fighting Bahamut. And I was on calculator duty, as I've told you before.
Oh
And
yeah.
calculator duty, I was essentially counting up all the damage that we'd done to see how much is left of Bahamut. But again, we didn't quite understand how the health worked because we never used the formula to predict the health of the enemy. So I was on calculator duty, and we were doing quite well. But then the television broke,
Oh.
and the screen went all garbled. We couldn't make out anything that was happening on the screen. And yet, using his memory of the position of all the commands and the attacks and the items, magic, my brother was able to navigate the menus blind, defeat Bahamut, and it wasn't like it was one more attack and that was it. I think it was a good 15 minutes of this, of playing Final Fantasy VIII without a screen, that he was able to defeat Bahamut and get to a save point, save the game, and we were able to continue.
Yeah.
We switched the console off, turned it back on again, and it was fine. So
Right.
yeah, claim to
Very
fame,
well done.
claim to fame right there. Thank you. I'll pass on your congratulations.
Suppose you couldn't have. It would have been harder for you to do calculator duty.
Oh no, I was
With that.
retired at that point. I don't know. There's not much I could have done.
Oh, oh right.
No, as in once the screen was garbled, I couldn't do anything anymore.
Oh right.
The
Yeah.
calculator was retired for that run.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think? Um, I'm just taking a look at my notes here. What do you think about people's, well, ideas maybe, or maybe like motivations to claim something a game or not a game? Because I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how someone will say something isn't a real game to say, oh, it's bad. But I
Hmm.
was also thinking about how people will like say something counts as a game based on what point they're wanting to make, and those, but that could be contradictory. So, say for example, someone there's like you've got someone who plays like Bejeweled on their phone, and they say, "Oh, I hate games. Games are awful," or whatever.
Hmm.
Like one person could say, "Yeah, well, what do you know? You only play Bejeweled. That's not a real game. You should play real games, then you'll know the truth."
Hmm.
But other person might say, "Ah, you say you don't like games, but you play Bejeweled, and that's a game."
Yeah.
And it's like it's to achieve the same goal, but whether or not they want to count something as a real game is like it's like they want to invite them into their club to say, "See, you're just like us," but also distance to say like, "Oh, you can't, you don't like have any position of authority
Hmm.
to make any comments on that."
Yeah. It's completely subjective, and this is my personal kind of wishy-washy conclusion to this whole subject. What is video games? When I started thinking about it, I I think perhaps I would have agreed more or less with the Dear Esther analysis that there is no win state, so there is no fail state. It's only you just getting to the end of the game, and so more or less, yeah, it's not really a video game. It's just like a story that you see unfold, and all you have to do is press W and hold the mouse, move the mouse around. Oh wow, this connection problem. Okay, and we're back.
Strange that the call isn't actually ending.
Yeah, it waits. I'm really happy that it waits. It's actually quite a nice feature
Yeah.
of Messenger. Um, I was saying that before I started thinking about this topic, before our conversation, I would have been more in the camp of Dear Esther, the Dear Esther criticism that there is no fail state and therefore it can't really be a game. But now I've come to the kind of wishy-washy conclusion that a video game can be anything, to be honest. Just like a game can be anything. You can make anything uh,
Yeah.
into a game. And so why can't Dear Esther be a game? Why can't visual novels be a game? Why can't the Wikipedia game be a video game?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Sorry, well, approaching now your question with this Bejeweled, somebody plays Bejeweled on their phone. Well, can they comment because they don't actually they actually haven't played any proper games, or are they playing games anyway and they're criticizing what they perceive to be games, whereas Bejeweled isn't really a game? It's subjective. That's the simplest way of putting it.
Well, I was just thinking about the way that people would like people's approach to say, because you say like let's say you've got someone who is like a real, like in their mind at least, they're a proper like true hardcore gamer, and they like only like they have the best opinions on games because they know what they're talking about because they're really, really into games. And they want everyone to agree. Like their goal is they want people to think that games are good.
Hmm.
Like if someone playing Bejeweled says to them, all games are bad, like whether or not that person then wants to include Bejeweled within the set of games is dependent on how they want to frame the argument. Because
Hmm.
on one hand they could say, yeah, well you like games, say you're a hypocrite. And on the other hand they could say, well what do you know? You like only like Bejeweled and that's not even a real game. So I think it's sort of assigning people use that to sort of like assign a value to something
Hmm.
where you could have you could have a real game that's terrible and you could have something that's not even close to a game that's actually really good.
Yeah, I agree.
So it
I
so
don't quite understand this argument, this way of compartmentalizing whether someone can be part of a group or not. If somebody doesn't
yeah,
understand, if the person that plays Bejeweled and that person says they don't like video games, if they don't understand, if they're ignorant of the wider world of video games, let's say,
yeah,
then it's it just goes to show that perhaps it's it would be better to explain it to them or better to show them. So I'll take an example of let's say esports or entering a video game industry. Let's say
yeah,
my dad when I was young, my dad said video games are a waste of time. Don't play them. I think they're stupid. At the same time, I also got him to play GTA Vice City when I was a kid. So, swings and
yeah. That's
roundabouts.
well, that's the one where you couldn't bear to shoot somebody because it wouldn't be honorable.
It wouldn't be
Is that
honourable to
right?
shoot somebody in the back because he couldn't figure out
Yes.
how to aim them as they were walking towards him. It took him too long. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic story, that in and of itself. But let's just say my dad says video games are terrible. I'm quite certain he doesn't play any video games at all. On In his free time, he
Yeah.
watches films, watches TV, that kind of thing. He not interested. My mum plays video games. She plays puzzle games on her phone. She's played Brain Training before on a Nintendo DS. She bought herself a Nintendo DS
Yeah.
many years ago. But my dad definitely not. But at the same time, if I was to tell my dad that I've got a job in the video game industry or that I was earning money as a professional video game player in esports, all of a sudden I don't think video games would be as stupid as he thinks, as he says, or as he used to say,
Yeah.
because he now sees value in it. So if I told
Yeah.
him that uh, I don't know, what could I be? A programmer. Very unlikely. But if I was a
Yeah.
programmer for a game studio and we're about to release a game and I'm earning a steady wage, he would no longer be so anti video games. So I think it's that kind of approach. Just somebody these kinds of people, they need to have more of an open mind.
Yeah.
And it's down to the person, like you were saying, that they could either say, "Oh, you're a hypocrite because you're actually playing games," or "Oh, you have no idea because you only play that game," or because
Yeah.
Bejeweled isn't even a game. I struggle to I struggle to put myself in that mentality or to put myself in that person's shoes because that's not the way I would argue. That's not the way I would tackle that kind of problem.
Yeah. But it is something I've seen a lot, and I think it's 2 points that are like very prevalent within the same group of people, but they are also they come from the same sentiment, but they're also contradictory. Like, is Bejeweled a game or not? And you can't argue both.
So this is actually quite interesting. The
Yeah,
the video game industry is huge, bigger than music
yeah,
and TV combined. Absolutely enormous it is. But it isn't all, you know, playing esports on a computer that that has a monitor at 300 frames per second, 300 hertz.
yeah,
Even though your typical young male Counter Strike player thinks that everything except Counter-Strike isn't a video game because, Counter-Strike requires so much skill and all the headshots and because my stats.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
if you look at the video game industry and what actually earns the most money, it's probably going to be the mobile games. The games that we would say aren't actually games, well, those games are the most lucrative in the video game industry.
yeah,
So like it or not, I'm afraid Bejeweled and Candy Crush and all those games, which I personally dislike. I dislike probably 99% of Android games or smartphone
yeah,
games, mostly because of the way they're the way they're monetized. But those are still games, and they are of value, like it or not.
yeah, yeah. So I think one interesting point with the like what counts as a game is with idle games because as you know, I play idle games
Hmm.
and they're a type of game that they have they have a following. They have people like posting like stats and different like strategies and all that and going into like real detail and all that and figuring out most efficient paths to get X or Y or whatever. And yet, there would still be lots of people out there who that would say, "Oh, they're not really games."
Yeah, but then again, I could, as a Counter Strike player, I could say, well, Call of Duty's not really a game. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all subjective. It's where you draw the line. Well, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I play a role playing game, and my role playing games, when I press a button, it has an immediate effect. And then somebody who plays an action game will say, "Well, that's not really a game because you're not moving your character around in battle."
yes,
I have
exactly.
heard that argument myself. I remember
Yes,
remember there was a group of friends at school. I played Final Fantasy VIII religiously, and I introduced them to Final Fantasy in general, but they played the PS2 ones because they didn't want to play the old one. Even though I told them with such passion that Final Fantasy VIII was the best. They were playing Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 12 even later on. And
yeah,
they loved it. They had a fantastic time. And we were able to talk about our experiences. And I just remember some other kids say, well, Final Fantasy games are stupid because you can't control the character, and I want to move my character around and swing the sword, and I can't do that, so that's a rubbish game. Well,
yeah,
there you go.
yeah. I'm very familiar with that mindset. I've come across it many times before.
Do you think the developers of Final Fantasy and the games that we knew and loved, that they've been infected with this mindset as well? Why are there fewer and fewer role playing games? What do you call it? Turn based games? Or am I just blind and I don't know because there are loads?
I don't know. They've been relegated to like the indie scene, I think. But
Well, there is a series of games that I really hope never become, this action kind of uh, what's the word for it?
real
Action,
time?
action, real time role playing game. So if you see Final Fantasy go from turn based, which is loads of fun in my opinion, and they've kind of
Yeah.
moved away from turn based, and they've become either a button masher or a kind of pseudo button masher. I don't know if you've heard. There's a game series called Level Up Land, and there are two entries into this series so far. Level Up Land 1 was that you only had one character and you control your character and you go around, but there are random encounters, and the random encounters involve turn-based battles. The second one is more interesting in one way. In the battles, you have three characters fighting up to three enemies, and again, this is turn-based, and I can't. I just really hope the developer doesn't go down the same route as Final Fantasy did. In the future, that
Yeah.
everything has to be, spam square in order to hit them 5 times with a sword. Maybe sometimes you select like a magic or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not too fond of that kind of way of playing uh, those kinds of role playing games. I don't know. I wish Final Fantasy stuck to it.
When you brought up Final Fantasy 8, I was thinking, right, well, we've got Final Fantasy 8 out the way, but we haven't said anything about Level Up Land yet, and here we are. Yeah. Well, the thing is, with Level Up Land, people people would say like, oh, they're kind of like action games in a way, and maybe people would like make a distinction between one and two, how they work. But I think fundamentally it's the same system.
Hmm.
It's just that with two, instead of like the whole mana bar action bar thing,
Yeah.
the only difference there is that um what would be a bar like charging up over time instead regularly like just does an attack.
Okay. Drawing this quite evident joke that I brought up because, of course,
Oh
Devon
yes,
Velocity 11 is the developer of Level Up Plan. I'm not sure if anybody knew that, but jokes aside, is
yeah,
there what could you possibly do to Level Up Land for Level Up Plan 3 that would bring it more to the mainstream while also, I don't know, keeping its soul intact? So take, for example, I don't know, I would describe now as an ignorant person that turn-based games are not in the mainstream, and that in the mainstream you just
yeah,
have action 3D games, jumping, climbing, crafting, that kind of stuff. And in my
yeah,
opinion, as I've just described, if Level Up Plan 3 was to become this action game that's no longer turn-based, it would be a huge departure from the first two games. But what other
yeah.
things could you do to Level Up Land with Level Up Plan 3 that when you reach, so if you wanted to reach a wider audience?
Um, I don't know. The thing is, if I wanted to really like do something like wildly different, I'd just make a different game. Do you know
Okay.
what I mean? I'd make like a new series or something like that. Which I mean, I have had ideas and I have started things, but it's just I haven't for a while. I haven't had that like, oh, I've got to make this game. Like I've definitely got to work on it all the time and make it. I haven't had that for a while.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like with Level Up Land 3, if I was to like say if I was to make it so you'd like run around and attack enemies like by like hitting a button to like attack and you've got to like position yourself and everything, I would be think that would just be weird. I wouldn't do that for Level Up Land.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Level Up Land, basically.
Yeah. I mean it would be because I'd call it Level Up Land, but it wouldn't be
It wouldn't
it
be in
wouldn't
our
be
hearts, okay?
yeah, it wouldn't it wouldn't be it's it's the something that in my mind is like it's something that I could if I wanted to. I just don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
End of questions. No further questions, Your
Yeah.
Honor.
Yeah.
Right. Well, do you have anything you'd like to add? So, what is video games? We've kind of come to the conclusion that it's whatever you'd like
Yeah.
it to be.
I think the best way to describe it is to say that the line might be blurry, but for the vast majority of things we talk about, it's so far beyond the line anyway that it's not really an issue.
Hmm.
It's like we wouldn't. I don't think you and I could have a deep conversation about, well, is Final Fantasy VIII really a game? Because the answer is just, well, yes.
Hmm. Yeah. But I don't think anybody would say Final Fantasy VIII isn't a game. I think a good game, obviously, that's a different question.
Yeah. I mean, probably not. I mean, maybe there'll be somebody out there who says like, oh, well, I can't even move around. I can't even swing my sword.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, not really a game. But yeah,
I would maybe summarize in this way. It's subjective, and the kind of person who would believe that a game like Final Fantasy VIII or any, well, they would say game X, Y, or Z isn't really a game. It wasn't really a video game, and they'll say it with such tenacity, such solid belief in their views, that's the kind of person I probably wouldn't listen to anyway. I think
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
who's experienced a lot, who's level headed enough that I would want to listen to their opinion. They probably wouldn't speak in such definite terms about most games.
yeah. I do think, I do think mostly, like my example with the whole like Bejeweled, like
Hmm.
my Bejeweled example where someone's like, oh well, that's not really a game or whatever. I think at the end of the day, Bejeweled is what it is, and if we wanted to have a conversation about Bejeweled, we could just talk about things in Bejeweled, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Where I could, because I've played Bejeweled before. I know how it works. I know how what happens when you match four or five in a row. Um, Now, do I think Bejeweled is a good game? Not really. I think Bejeweled 3 is probably the best one. I played a bit of that. I was like, oh, this has got a few extra mods to it, a few different games on it that makes it like add some twist to the formula. I think it's all right. Um, and if ever it came up in conversation, I could talk about it, and people could talk about it, and whether or not, like, say, the Almighty God came down from high heavens and declared Bejeweled to not be a game, it would be like, well, all right then, we'll, I can still talk about the different things in this thing
Okay.
that isn't a game, if that makes any sense.
So, if I may try to summarize,
Yeah.
essentially, we don't have this all-powerful deity to tell us, give us a clear definition. We don't have
Yes.
the Academy of English to tell us what the very definition of a video game is, and therefore there is no line. No line can be drawn, and that's the end.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
the most conclusive. Actually, that's like perhaps the most conclusive episode that we've had. We've set out, we've had a question, and we've answered it. And I think we've answered it very well. We've explored various ideas, and we can categorically say, what is video games? Well, anything really, as long as it's to do with a computer or electronic in some way.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Okay. Yeah. But I think most, I think mostly, um, I think the conclusion that I have is sort of similar to that, but it's mostly just whether we call something a game or not. I'd rather talk about what the thing itself and the properties of it. Like, do you rest there? Whether it's a game, whether you want to call it a game, whether you want to say it's not a game,
Hmm.
it's a thing. It has things in it, and we can talk about those things.
So we could add in brackets
Yeah,
after the response that it is whatever we want it to be. We could add in brackets,
yeah,
but ultimately it's not a particularly relevant question.
yeah. I suppose so.
Fantastic. Good.
Right.
Okay, I think we we can stop the recording. Or when you edit it later, you can just cut it wherever you want. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
That was interesting. It was a short one though, 1 hour.
Right. Well, I think for the next one, here's my idea, and we can.
Hmm.
Are you still recording?
Yeah, I'm still recording.
All right. Well, I'll just say for the next one, I think we could do explaining games to a non-gamer. So the whole thing of like trying to introduce people to this idea of games and what they like what people's approaches are and how people
Hmm.
like what things people struggle with and our experiences of other people struggling with things, or maybe people pick up on things, just see how other like outside of the game landscape how people take it, I guess.
Hmm. Did I
Does that
tell
sound
you?
like a good idea for next one?
Yeah, fantastic.
Right.
Did I speak about the Neverhood?
You did.
So I played that. That's a game that I never played before that Ella played, and Ella has a very very limited experience with games.
Right.
But I can talk about that. Yeah, I've got a few ideas for that topic.
Very good.
Sorry, anybody. Anyway, How is everything? How are you doing, personal life wise?
Yeah,
Everything all
everything's
right?
fine. Just carrying on as normal.